Hi, I'm Mike.
And I'm Joe.
And you're listening to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up, the podcast. And this week, we're reviewing The Witch.
She turned me into a newt. I got better.
Welcome to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up, featuring two guys drinking the witch's brew and reviewing movies in a weekly podcast form.
And this week, we'll be drinking Grosk. Okay, you ready for this?
How do you
Put
do
your
this?
fingers behind here. See, hold it. See where the back is bare?
Uh-huh.
And then...
It's, for those who can't see,
Bare.
the madness that's ensuing right now. It's got one of those, like, growler tops on the bottle.
And then... So then push. Oh, that was anticlimactic. Push with both fingers.
How many fingers am I pushing with?
And then push lower. Push lower.
This hurts. It hurts. Woo! That's a nice sound. Mm-hmm. All right, so this is just like a clear, green, transparent bottle with a growler top on it.
Yeah, it's nice. It's me and Nick really like these. We used to like down a few of these and
oh, that's got that
get
like
wild.
That sour Heineken taste to it.
Mm-hmm. I like this. This is one of my favorites. I like it better than Heineken. And
does it come in a 6-pack? What did you buy this in?
This comes in a 4-pack.
A 4-pack.
Uh-huh.
Even in Pennsylvania, it's a 4-pack.
Yeah. I mean, you can buy larger packs, but they don't sell 6-packs of this. They sell 4-packs of bottles like this. I think they sell just regular bottles in 6-packs.
It's not even 12 ounces. It's 15.2 ounces.
Yeah.
Fluid ounces.
So
interesting.
Yeah. And how can you say no to these bottles? These are cool.
They're very cool looking. I can't even... That hurt. That hurt trying to get that cap off.
I'm sorry, Paul.
You hurt me.
I'm sorry. I forgot your fingers were so bony and old.
They're so frail.
We are fucking exhausted.
2 episodes deep. About to knock off this third. So like we said, we're reviewing The Witch. Mm-hmm. And according to the IMDb description, it's about a family in 1630s New England is torn apart by the forces of witchcraft, black magic, and possession.
You're tearing me apart,
Lisa, you witch.
All right. So
hop into those Joe notes.
I got some Joe notes. I got a lot of Joe notes. And again, I'm pretty tired, a little loopy. Me and Mike tried to start this episode like 3 or 4 times with just goofing, just being goof boys.
Silly boys.
So The Witch, which is I just realized like how much that homophone is gonna kill me this episode between the WIT witch and the WHI witch.
Which witch are you referring to?
Which witch is which?
Who's on first?
Okay. So, The Witch, which is...
That's good.
That's good. The Witch, which is... accompanied by the subtitle, A New England Folktale, does a lot with its title. For example... The witch is stylized as the witch, replacing the W with 2 V's. And it's like the marketing team behind the film is run by like some German guy who decided to spell the title phonetically. Like, das Film we're making is Da Witch.
Hop with me now.
Now, I joke, but Mike can vouch for me on this next part. I'm a complete sucker for stylized film titles. Now, I say this because during the pre-production of our short film, I really had to be talked off of the ledge of stylizing less than 3 as just a less than sign and a number 3. I think everyone tried to talk me out of that, that's like essentially like the recipe for like a heart emoticon, which is cute, but
You're
just
welcome, America.
unconventional. Anyway, I did my research, and typographically, Da Vinci checks out.
It's good.
In the 16th century, they would use 2 V's or 2 U's in the place of a W, essentially 2 W's, hence the term W or double U.
Oh!
Get it? All right. Enough typography talk, though.
These Joe notes are thorough.
Let's get into some actual Joe notes. The Witch was very obviously somebody's first film. It was directed by Robert Eggers, but what I was saying before was, Mike and I had this conversation before. I think the last time I was here, and after we finished recording, we watched Ex Machina, and I was like, that had to be somebody's first film. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just like, that's like somebody's...
And not even in like a bad way at all.
Right, no, yeah, and that's not like a condescending remark, like, you know, like when somebody's like, when it's their first idea, like, that's their baby, like that's been somebody's...
They've had their entire life to, you know,
right,
groom
yeah.
that idea, and then when they get that chance to make it, it's like, well, I've got to make this perfect. I can't, like... Which is the opposite of what you would think in terms of, like, you know, someone's first
movie,
you know, be mistake-ridden and just, you know,
right,
sloppy. But I think it tends to be more, you know, well, I've got to make this perfect, and this has to be the perfect film.
Right. And the attention to detail and everything in this film is wild. It's just, everything is very well done. Mm-hmm. Everything from the dialect to just the details in the props and everything that they use. The Witch premiered at Sundance Film Festival. I think it premiered there, where it was very well received. Robert Eggers won the best director in drama, and the film was nominated for a grand jury prize, but did not win. But he won best director, so I don't know. Yeah, and we were saying this before, like, you know, like when you're like a critic darling at Sundance and you just won best director, everybody's gonna be on your dick, kind of. And he's
metaphorically and literally.
Yeah, I'm sure he got some.
I'm sure he got laid because of this movie.
What a weird movie to get like laid after.
Yeah, you like that?
Dost thou
wouldst thou like to ride?
Wouldst thou like the taste of Robert Eggers?
It'll make sense later if you haven't seen it.
Oh gosh. But I think he's already in the works of making a Nosferatu remake or movie of some sort.
Yeah, I guess a remake technically, which is cool because if you look on his IMDb credits, he's already done like a Nosferatu short film of some kind. Because this is his feature-length debut, but he's made other films, so to speak. He's not a total newbie.
Right.
But I'm personally really excited to see where that goes after seeing this. Because obviously
definitely.
Nosferatu is something that he's had an interest in before. It's not just some, you know, studio throwing that at him and being like, oh, make this. It sounds like something he would actually really care about. So it'd be very interesting to see how that turns out. And just because Nosferatu is fucking creepy as fuck.
Yeah. And I think another thing that I was talking about, just another piece of information. I was reading this in some sort of interview with him. But he's in his IMDb page. He has it's nothing like, no real major films or anything. I believe they're even just all short films. but he is primarily works as a what does he do?
Production designer.
Yeah, like a production designer. And so he was very specific about how everything was portrayed, or how all of everything was set up. I think first of all,
And you've seen like his picture on like
yes.
I'm just like looking at it now because I just navigated to his page. He looks like he should be in like Evanescence or some like goth band in like the early 2000s.
Does he really? I thought he looked a little more modern.
He's got like that type of like eye that like looks like it is like permanently wearing like eyeliner, even though it's not. Like,
I thought he looks like the one guy in like Deaf Heaven. I thought too.
yeah, he's got some modern sensibilities, but I could also just see him being
definitely
like
yeah.
an Evanescence music video. Like how like goth kids like wished they looked like.
But I think you were talking about, right, like they filmed this in Canada because for tax purposes
and it being cheaper there.
Which you can't believe, because I mean I didn't realize it until Mike said it, because you can make anywhere look like anywhere, but it does. It looks like a slice of like that colonial America. It looks so. Somebody had to do some serious like searching for this area, and again, this guy's very specific. The father character cuts Ralph. I think that's his name. The father character cuts wood when he's like angry, kind of, or just trying to like burn off steam, kind of. And the set design or prop whatever
Department.
right, brought him wood, and he's like, this is kind of like, this looks like it's cut by like a saw. Like I can tell this is cut by a saw. And they're like, are you kidding me? And he's like, no. He's like, just, can you please fix this? And they're like, okay. So I'm pretty sure they like hand cut or use some sort of different sort of saw. Same thing happened when they were going to build like the house out in like the clearing or whatever that the family lives in. He was like, I don't really want you guys to build the house out of this wood. And they're like, are you fucking kidding me? And he's like, I'm sorry. And so again, they made it more appropriate. And again, they didn't even use nails to build the structure that they live in. They used whatever device they used back then to basically make this house. And again, that's not something you can really see like on the big screen, like even, but it's something that I think him as a set designer really appreciated, and he needed that. It's just kind of like,
and also just him as like a first time director. And
definitely,
kind of
right.
like what we brought
again,
that up.
It's
like,
your baby.
Yeah, like you want this film to be perfect, and I think it's like he hasn't been like jaded by Hollywood yet, where he's just kind of like, all right, like just whatever. They're not gonna see it yet.
Right.
It has to be perfect for his his baby at this point.
And there are just like true visionaries out there. Like I know Matthew Weiner, the creator of Mad Men, will like walk around like the floor of like the Sterling Cooper and put like a piece of gum under like the corner of like one table. Yeah. Like there's crazy people out there, like, and like good crazy. But yeah. So that's a little background of the director, and he did a phenomenal job as a first time director on this film. So I guess if we want to jump into the plot a bit, we really spent a long time on the plot with the episode we just did, the Deadpool film.
Too much time.
So, and this is a very simple plot, really. So really, the film opens up, and he's kind of at this, I don't even know what I would call it.
Plantation, I guess, or
well, he's
colony.
I guess he's brought in front of a council, in front of like his fellow citizens, and he's accused of I think it's
heresy.
Oh, okay, prideful conceit. I thought they like said or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's what they say, but he's being excommunicated because he spoke out against the church, and that's what he says in his kind of defense. Is some things against the church, while being a devout Christian.
You know, and what exactly this entails, we never find out, and we never really know. And it's just something we kind of have to go with, and it's kind of better that way.
Mm-hmm. But I think that
but he claims he's like only the pure and faithful something of the Gospels. Like I forget exactly what he says, but he sees himself as blameless.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it serves a good effect in terms of establishing like how seriously Christianity and religion was taken at this time, where
Right.
this is a guy who's being excommunicated, like literally like banished from the colony and like driven out of the church. And that's the first thing you see, but then when you come to find him out as a person, like he's a pretty like devout Christian, someone who obviously believes it very seriously, and it affects and infects like every fiber of his being and every second of his life.
In every aspect of his life.
But whatever he said was so bad in the eyes of, the greater Christian community that he was excommunicated as a heretic and banished from the colony. So it definitely establishes how important Christianity and religion is just to, the colonies and to this society.
Oh, definitely.
While also showing how important it is to him, despite him being excommunicated and banished.
So he and his kin are banished. With all their possessions piled up on a cart, and the wilderness awaits.
Yeah, they find a little slice of land in New England, and they build these houses and a farm, and it's kind of just like a little makeshift farm of corn, because they're really just kind of trying to survive until they can plant more.
It's like when you're first starting off in Minecraft.
You haven't found potatoes and carrots yet, so all you can plant is wheat.
Little like wooden houses.
Oh, it's so accurate.
This is like the Minecraft time of America, where you're just kind of out on your own, and there's witches out in the woods. And you have to really like stay indoors like during the dark, like.
How did I not think of that? So we're sort of introduced to his kids, and he's got his oldest daughter is Thomasin. His oldest son is Caleb, and then there's two twins, Jonas and Mercy, or is it Jonas and Mercy or Jonas? Jonas and Mercy. And then his youngest son is Samuel. And the film kind of like kicks right into it, which to great effect. Thomasin is playing peekaboo with Samuel out on their property, and she covers her face. She keeps doing the oh peekaboo. And one time she covers her face, and when she opens her eyes, Samuel is gone. And then we kind of cut to this shot of this I don't know, hooded, but like
and there's well at first there's like it kind of like the camera kind of like swings around, and there's just like still like weeds kind of like moving. And I didn't know if they were gonna show something, and they do show something. They keep paying a lot of attention to just to kind of set the location. It's this, I don't know if a field is the right word, but it's this open clearing right. In this very tall pine forest, and there's just this one distinct tree that's dead out of all these live pine trees. And that's the first thing they cut to after looking and seeing that Samuel, the baby, is gone. Right.
And they cut to that tree. And then we cut to, after that, a shot of the titular witch running away with Samuel, and she's got this red kind of cloak on, and she's making this like weird noise as she's running that was very unsettling. Like it's like a grunting, like almost animalistic type noise, like just totally creepy. And this is one of the in my opinion, one of the better strategic parts of the film is that it jumps right into some very crazy visuals from this point on. Stuff that in most horror films would be reserved for the climax or towards the end of the film.
Right.
But it jumps right into this witch stealing the baby, bringing it back to her hovel or her, hut or whatever you want to call it. And
where we see like the baby nude.
Yeah,
which is a little like weird, and I believe she is nude too.
She's nude too.
And
which goes against all the like Puritan Christianic beliefs of that time. And then she essentially muddles the baby like an ingredient for a stew and just chops the baby up. Which, I mean, tastefully is definitely not the word, but you don't necessarily see her actually do this to the baby. Obviously,
you just
see the after effects of there's a baby here, and then in the next scene she's.
I think even a knife is brought into like, which I almost didn't like. Like they kind of like there's a very long shot on the baby, and then like a rusty knife kind of like slowly makes its way like in front of the baby. Just to, like, it's almost like showing it to the camera, like, this is what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. I kind of rather would have had just the baby and then her fucking pounding like a bloody pulp on like a stump in the woods, kind of.
And you kind of, there's this shot that like, I remember hearing like the theater like audibly like gasp because it's just this shot behind this witch character just completely nude where you're just seeing her like very unshapely like ass pretty much.
Right.
Just to kind of point it out because I thought it was great. The actress who plays the titular witch, her name is Bathsheba Garnett, which I think is just the greatest name in the world.
That is great.
For a role like that. But she's essentially just chopping this baby up, but you see it from behind, so you're not seeing the baby, and then you kind of just see the after effects of not even like a baby arm or a body part, but just literally like
guts
just decimated.
Yeah.
You're just left to assume that is what once was the baby, and
like a pulp.
Yeah, and she rubs this stuff basically all over herself.
And like a stick and
she's rubbing it all over a stick and almost kind of like grinding against the stick like it's a pole or something.
Right.
And it's just you're kind of left to assume that it's a ritual to maybe kind of rejuvenate herself and bring her youth back.
Now I had what's it called? If you go onto the Wikipedia page, because I had assumed the same thing about the it makes her more youthful kind of thing. It says one day while Thomason this is in the plot description. One day while Thomason is playing with Samuel, a witch who lives in the forest abducts Samuel. The witch kills him and uses his blood and fat to make a flying ointment, which she rubs all over herself. So, which is
that's kind of weird. I don't know where they get that.
I know. Well, there's even a hyperlink to flying ointment, and I guess it's a flying ointment, also known as witch's flying ointment, green ointment, yada yada yada. Is a
I guess that would explain why she's rubbing it all over the stick too, because that's what she's gonna.
Yeah, and then there's pictures of witches flying to Sabbath on on a stick. So I guess that makes sense.
It doesn't totally fit in with the plot later. We'll get into that.
You're right. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so this is all basically just to say that the movie kind of just dives right into it. We haven't even really gotten to know these characters, and the first thing that we're really exposed to is there's a baby in this family. The baby is taken. The baby is murdered in a very gruesome way and used for a ritual. And we just have this very satanic, over-the-top scene. And then even cinematically, like literally, like the music is swelling, and was it you that was saying that you thought it was a raven in that scene? Or
I did. I thought there was. Yeah,
I might have to go back and watch it again. I thought it was the witch walking towards the moon with her cape on, just because she has such an unshapely body. Like she's purposely picked out because
I thought it was.
She's almost like hunchbacked, and like her ass just has no shape to it. It's just totally like old and flat and saggy.
I think it was a crow.
I'd have to watch it again. Which you could be, because there is a crow later in the movie. But either way, the music is swelling. There's a huge moon, which plays into like the moon in terms of witchcraft and whatnot. And then we kind of are sort of drawn back into the more natural and realistic parts of the plot. And
Right.
I think that it's a great device in terms of the plot because it sort of shows, where the film is willing to go.
Definitely.
And then it draws it back so that anytime anything happens in the film, you're like, well, is it going to be that gruesome again? Are they going to show us that much again? Because they showed us that much in the beginning. Mm-hmm. So it kind of just heightens your expectations and your anticipation and your fear for the rest of the film.
Mm-hmm. And it's also like, when that is happening, you're also like, what's going on here? Like, is it going on at all? Like, is this some sort of, metaphor really of like what is really going on? And I mean, that continues all the way up until like the end of the movie and continued like after you see the movie. You really are like, what is going on? But yeah, no, I mean, we essentially go back to this makeshift home that the family that we're following is at, and the mother is really stricken with guilt,
Catherine, yeah.
and she doesn't sleep for days, and she just lives in prayer, and just, again, it casts a lot of emphasis on just how important religion is to them and everything.
And there's definitely, you can tell just kind of a disconnect between the family and Thomasin, because obviously this happened, while she
under
was
her watch,
while she was watching Samuel. And just, the crops are they're failing. There's a scene where William, or the dad, is out with his oldest son Caleb, and basically saying that no one's gonna buy our corn is not doing well. I had to sell your mother's favorite silver cup in order to get these traps so that we can trap food in order to make it through the winter, because our crops are obviously going to die during the winter,
right? And the pellets and everything, that they can sell those.
And the plot, slow's not a word, but it's more just paced differently throughout that part. Just in terms of, in comparison to the beginning, where now we sort of get to learn about the characters, and Thomasin is not the black sheep of the family, but maybe now is more sort of on the outskirts.
Right.
Caleb's obviously like the favorite son, being like the firstborn, and then there's the two twins, Jonas and Mercy, who are just kind of like the troublemakers. And there's a really great scene of them playing with the goat, this black goat, Black Phillip, and just like singing songs as they're playing with him.
And they're totally, I don't know. There's definitely a part where everybody becomes creepy essentially in this family at one point. But the Jonas and, what's her name?
Mercy.
Jonas and Mercy are the
boy and girl twins, we should say.
Yeah. They're like the cutest kind of characters ever.
The most like amazing casting
It is. They are incredible casting.
And I feel like I've seen them in something else before, but I haven't looked at it yet.
They actually haven't been. And I looked like,
I could have sworn I've seen the Jonas Kid in something else before.
But they parade around the. There's a fantastic scene where they are kind of like chasing this black goat around their property, and they're holding hands, and they both have like sticks, and they're kind of like brushing the ground with them, and they're chanting like this olden, like, whatever nursery rhyme they're doing, and they're just so in sync. And the costume design is fantastic because they look like tiny, fat, like settlers, kind of.
Oh yeah,
because like the way that their clothing is
designed. There's no like
designed.
Children clothing back then. It's just smaller adult clothing.
So like you could fit like 4 of this boy just like long ways into like the clothing that he's wearing, and it's just like so much more animated. And they both have this. They're not actual twins either. But they have the same look in their eyes and everything, and they're so hats off to like their performance too. They're just fantastic, through and through in this film.
So in terms of the plot, they're kind of just, things are not going well on the farm. Catherine is still, the mother is still obviously very distraught
Grieving,
about this.
yeah.
The corn is not doing well. It's not selling well to whoever happens to come by. So they discuss the idea of maybe sending Thomason out and sort of, I don't know what the word is. You're not selling her away, but maybe having her work for another family.
That is how the kids put it, though. Like when because the parents think that all of the kids are asleep when they are discussing it, and obviously this Minecraft house that they've built is pretty like
Not soundproof.
right. Yeah, it's the difference between you on the second floor and your parents is like one plank of wood, kind of.
Yeah.
So they do, and they Thomason and Caleb are very both in tune with like our parents are gonna sell Thomason off kind of thing. That's like they say that verbatim.
Well, I mean, sell is not, I don't think conceptually is essentially the word. It's
right. I do think they
it's
say
more
that
just
at one point,
having her work for another family.
Oh, right,
Like, it's not like,
definitely,
we're gonna give Thomason away. It's more like we can't afford to feed this many mouths here, and
right.
we also are not fond of Thomason right now because she let our one son die.
Right. And is she the oldest?
She is the oldest.
And she's the oldest. I don't know. I think it's getting around that time where they can probably marry her off kind of thing.
Well,
too.
they also, the other thing they bring up is that I forget how there's a really great way they word it in the script. I wish I had remembered it, but basically that she's had her period and that she's
right. Yeah.
becoming a woman, and I think they're more implying that it would be better for her to learn about that stuff, among other people and in the settlement, as opposed to out here with like, only her family around her.
Because in the beginning there are just fantastic scenes of like where Thomason is like sleeping, or she's like gathering water and leaning over, and Caleb has this like kind of wandering eye, and the camera will zoom up on like her low cut kind of like dress and show her cleavage or whatever, and Caleb's like, you're only living with your family. That's what you're going to naturally be.
The first time they did it, I thought they were trying to establish something about his character, like him being less than good or something like that. But then you come to realize it's just more that, they've been banished from the settlement. They only have their family, and he's just hitting puberty. So
that's all you have. Yeah.
He's going to look somewhere.
Right, exactly.
It's either his mom or Thomason or his like 5-year-old sister.
Right, yeah. So I guess even before that conversation happens, they're down by the river collecting water.
Mm-hmm.
I think the parents have dismissed both Caleb and Thomason. Okay. So the father's trying to get the black goat into their little pen after the twins have been chasing it around their property, and he slips and falls, and he gets his clothes dirty, and they say like, Thomason, go clean his clothes, just obviously because she is like the less favored child. And then eventually they tell Caleb like, go down and get some water for the family. And so they're both down there, and he's checking her out. And then Mercy, is that the
Mercy is the girl, yeah.
And she comes down, and she's kind of just, as kids do, playing pretend, and she has a stick between her legs, and she says like, I'm the witch who carried like the baby away, kind of, and she just kind of like in a taunting way for her siblings, kind of, and it's a little too creepy for like Thomason, and it's like please, like, stop that.
Yeah.
And until the point where she initiates as an older sister like a sort of like scare tactic where she's like, no, I'm the witch that like took the baby away. Like, I was with the baby when like the baby went missing. I took her out to the woods, and like I like to prance around in the woods naked, and read the book of the devil and everything. And so
I signed my name in the book. And
yes,
she pins her to the ground, and she's really really scaring Mercy. Mm-hmm. And then Teller's like, you can't tell anyone about this, and Mercy obviously runs off. Mm-hmm. And then I think it's after that actually that the discussion about sending Thomason away comes up. And then the next major point is that Caleb,
goes out to,
half being, just his affection for his, siblings naturally. And then I think the other half being his special affection for Thomason because of him coming of age in this kind of weird, strange way. He decides to kind of take things into his own hand, and rather than allowing the family situation to get so dire, he's going to go out on a hunting trip and, collect hopefully rabbits and whatnot from the traps that they've set, but also just to hunt on his own. And while he's getting ready in the morning, Thomason catches him and, where are you going? And she basically won't let him leave unless she's allowed to come with him.
Right.
So they go out on a hunting trip, and they find some stuff in the traps, and then they see a rabbit, which they actually saw before. There was a hunting trip that Caleb and his father went on, and turns out to be a rather mischievous rabbit because some stuff happens, and the dog runs off, the horse gets spooked and runs off, and Thomason ends up falling off it,
knocked unconscious.
Yeah, and they're kind of just out of it for a while, and when they come to,
and
they're separated, Caleb is able to find the dog, but the dog's just had his entrails ripped out, and
Caleb takes off before Thomason. His horse is spooked, and
Caleb is running after the rabbit because he wants to shoot it.
He can kill the rabbit. But then everything kind of goes awry, and he gets lost, and he finds the dog completely obliterated, and the horse is off, nowhere to be found, and it's getting late now,
And so the family's looking for them, and the father, William, I guess his name is able to find Thomason, but they can't find Caleb. And because it's dark and whatnot, they're forced to kind of just go back to the home without Caleb. And now it's obviously Thomason has lost two of our kids, so things are not looking good for Thomason.
And then we cut to a scene of Caleb, who was walking towards a sort of hut in the swamp,
hovel, or what you would call it.
Yeah. And I really didn't think that they would, but they start to show an actual witch figure.
Okay, I jumped. That's one of the few scenes that I jumped. It's not a very jump scare type movie, but it's just this really long shot, just moving towards this very dimly lit, not even just dark, but just intentionally poorly lit hovel. And then it's just so long that you're kind of oh, they're not going to do
They're
anything.
not going to show, yeah.
But then this leg steps out of it, and I don't even know if the music swells at that point, but just the shock of that leg coming out. I was literally just oh my God.
Right.
So much anticipation there. And this very beautiful actress, I don't know if she's credited. It looked like Eva Green, though, a lot.
But she definitely, she's the grown-up version, almost of his sister.
Sarah Stevens is the young witch.
And she
hot, though.
Yeah. And she has this sort of overflowing, cleavage and...
Very busty, yeah.
Everything that,
everything
obviously...
that a 12-year-old boy is looking for.
Right. And exactly. And all of a sudden, it's kind of all right to feel he's coming with these feelings, and he doesn't have any girls his own age, or he doesn't even have any girls that are outside of his family, and all of a sudden this is coming outside of the house, and he's horrified, but he's so intrigued, and very bizarrely, after a lot of shots of her cleavage, they embrace for a kiss, which is strange.
And then the other jump scare right after that is she's embracing him, but then an old hand, which is, her hand, because this is obviously the witch who's just, shape-shifting or somehow presenting herself as younger than she actually is. This old hand comes and grabs him. So things are not going well back at the family. We're probably dragging too much on the plot. Things are not going well. Thomason actually finds Caleb. Oh, God, the girl
Yeah. So Thomason finds Caleb later that night, just shaken and completely naked,
yeah.
in front of their property. They tend and care for him, and he sleeps for a very long time. They haven't heard anything from him, and then this is where we kind of start to tread into spoiler territory. Is during the next day, they're all upstairs tending to him, and he starts to sort of wake up and choke. And so the father, I guess, pries his mouth open to some extent.
Yeah, he sticks like I'm not sure what type of tool it is, but some kind of tool in his mouth to get his teeth apart, and he ends up spitting out a rotten apple.
Yeah, a rotten apple. And this is where the movie really goes into, like, I thought this was one of my favorite scenes of the movie, is because then Caleb he starts to just spout off things that are both like prayers that he's memorized, but also like some weird kind of like witch devil shit. Like,
well, yeah, and he almost ends up sounding like a preacher that's like 40 years older than he actually is.
Right.
Like, he's like a 12-year-old kid, and just like the things he's saying are like, I can't even remember the way he phrases it, but it's just like this like complete like almost like brainwashed like adoration for like God and Christ and like Christianity, like way more than you would expect from even the most like devout like 12-year-old.
Right,
Like,
right, yeah.
It's almost unsettling, like the things that he says in
Right.
that, like weird moment.
But he and at this time he does start spouting like weird kind of like devil stuff, like at first. And what's very creepy is that the twins are off to his left, and they're repeating him and chanting with him, kind of, and it's very strange.
He's having this weird like heaving motion where his like chest is like popping up, and and his like legs are like twitching, and the twins actually like fall down on the ground and start like mimicking what he's doing too. And
then the father calls for like we all need to pray around him, and then the twins do something even more creepy, and they start to like kind of like cry, and they're like, we forgot our prayers, and like, which is very weird. And then they go very silent, and so it's the mother, father, and Thomason praying around him. And again, I do like Caleb. I know a lot of people thought his performances were like hot and cold. Like when he's in the woods, like, or like almost everything, he is this very loyal son. And I feel like a lot of his stuff sounds like rehearsed almost, because like that's their life, that's their religion. He's just like mimicking like what he's always been told. Like that's like even like when like the father's like he's in the woods, and the father like asks
well rehearsed, Caleb.
Right, yeah.
Or well remembered.
yeah. And that's all Caleb is. He's this kind of this mockingbird who like just like spits back out like what his father tells him. And what I really like about this scene, and Caleb in this fit dies, but before he dies, he has like this revelation almost like of somebody who's like older, kind of.
He sounds like a preacher, like in like one of those like traveling tents, like,
right? Yeah.
Just like spouting this like off the cuff like terminology about loving God and whatnot. And
but he almost, I like that though a lot. And I mean, again, the dialect is very different than we're used to. It could sound more complex, but for me, not only was there was some sort of spirit in him, but he also knew he was going to die, and all of a sudden everything that he had just remembered and just automatically kind of, or just like very auto kind of like all of a sudden this all made sense to him. And for like once, he just kind of said it with conviction, kind of like, oh my God, I finally get it. And then he like dies. And
I thought that was definitely one of that actor, I'm not sure what the kid's name was, but
Harvey Scrimshaw.
Harvey Scrimshaw. Oh, that's a great name. That's a great fucking name. But that was definitely one of the better performances from him. I mean, I would even call it like a fantastic performance from him in that scene, like one of the
Right.
better performances in the entire movie. But then there are just other scenes where, yeah, there are the scenes where he's reciting Bible verses where that felt rehearsed. But then there are scenes
Right.
where it's not necessarily him rehearsing something or reciting something. But you can just tell, and I can't really blame him because he's a young kid. But
Oh,
like
right, yeah.
there's the language is so old and outdated and ancient that it's like a foreign language, and I couldn't really expect a kid to grasp, the meaning of the things that he's saying. And there's times where it just felt like a kid, reading Spanish or reading another language.
Right, yeah.
Even though he's just reading, not old English, but an older dialect and vocabulary that we're not used to now. But that scene, I don't know if it was filmed later and he was more accustomed to that dialect and vocabulary at that point. But that was definitely, there was no hint of like, oh, he's just reciting this. Like he was fully acting out like those words.
Right. It was definitely some of
And
the
maybe
best
that's
acting
Robert Eggers
in the
being like,
film.
well, this is the big scene. Like this is, I'm going to explain word by word what this means. But that was definitely some very good acting at that point.
Because that's definitely a lot of people. I mean, I've heard a lot of people cite that as like their favorite scene of the film, and it is. It's where shit starts to get really serious, because then the twins, everybody's freaked out that this is like the second death in like the family, and then the twins admit to like, oh, Thomason told us she was a witch. And then the father takes her outside. And he's like, are you a witch? And she's like, no. And she's like, you know who is a witch? It's those twins. They talk to Black Phillip, which is the black goat. And like,
She's got chills as you said Black Phillip.
oh, right, yeah. Like, that's like, they talk to the fucking devil out there kind of like thing. And the father is just confused and just very, at his wit's end. And he essentially ends up locking them, not even locking them, but just
boarding them up in the half finished barn that they have.
Yeah.
And he's basically like, whether you're a witch or not, you'll be here the entire night and we'll figure it out in the morning.
Right, yeah. And they're left there. And
I think this is where we should probably really put like a hard spoiler cutoff, because this is where shit starts to really get real.
Right.
And I feel like horror fans definitely take, and just in the horror genre, the endings
Oh,
are
definitely.
way more important than other films. So
Right.
if you haven't seen The Witch yet and you don't want the ending spoiled for you, this is where you should turn this off and listen to it later.
Right, definitely.
Spoiler alert, heavy coming up.
But I don't know whether it's. I think they spend a night in there and nothing really happens, or maybe they maybe they nail them in there in the morning, but
he nails them in there during the day.
But there's a beautiful scene where the Kate and Ralph, the parents, go to bury Caleb. They're kind of Catherine and William.
William is his name. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I think Ralph's the actor's name, but they go to bury him, and there's like this very wide shot of them like kind of just standing, and eventually the mother does like kind of like jump into the grave.
Crawls into the grave.
Yeah, after the son. But there's this very, very long shot of them just standing above the grave, and that was one of my favorite shots of the whole film.
A lot of that, we haven't really talked about it, but just visually, this is like, it's not your typical horror film in terms of just the cinematography. Like it's almost more like an art film or like an indie film.
Oh,
that just
definitely.
happens to be about like a scary subject. Like everything is so precise and deliberate in all the shots. Like I didn't feel like there was any really shots that were just like, oh, we need to fill like 5 minutes here. Like
Right.
everything was, even if it was, technically a filler shot, it was as beautiful as could be. And it's not even like a crazy beautiful location that they're filming in. It's just kind of a nondescript clearing in a pine forest with a dead tree in it.
Right, yeah.
That they just built this, makeshift home for themselves.
So then this is where the shit really hits the fan, is when they go to sleep that night and the parents are in the house and the remaining 3 kids are locked in this boarded up barn. And
I think also to be mentioned is the fact that while they're during the daytime, and I think Thomason at this point does sort of believe that maybe that they're not witches, but that there is something going on with the twins, even though she was kind of just defending herself before. And she asked them, do you guys actually talk to Black Phillip when you're talking to him? And they don't respond, which I think is very telling for later. Then the night does come, and I think the first thing we kind of see is this vision that Catherine has, where she wakes up and her two children that have died, Caleb and Samuel, are alive, and Caleb's holding Samuel, and she has this scene where she's talking to them, and she's just so happy to see them, and she's like, oh, I've got to wake William and tell him, and Samuel's talking in this like really creepy like low whisper, and he's like, I forget how he says that, but he's essentially like, don't wake him, like let's just
let him sleep, he needs to sleep.
He needs to sleep. It's the creepiest fucking like whisper, which is really well performed by that kid Harvey Scrimshaw. And then we find out that obviously this is not actually Caleb and Samuel. It's a raven.
Right.
And in that scene, she thinks she's breastfeeding Samuel because Samuel must be hungry because he's been out in the cold for so long. But actually, it's just a raven just biting her nipple.
Right, yeah. And she wakes up to like just a huge bloodstream from like her nipple. But what's happening out in the barn overnight is essentially the witch kind of like flies up onto top of the barn and then comes in and starts drinking the earlier there a goat. I think it wasn't Black Phillip, it was the white goat.
White Phillip.
Yeah. Is essentially lactating blood. So she starts to drink from that, straight from like the teat of the goat, and then Mercy and Jonas are horrified, and she like looks over and with like blood dripping down her face,
which I think is very telling, because I think earlier in the film you're led to believe that they might actually be the witches just because of the way that they're talking to Black Phillip. But I think the fact that they're so horrified by seeing the witch, I think it's very clear that they were probably just troublemakers earlier on, and even if they were talking to Black Phillip, they were maybe too young to understand how crazy it was to talk to an actual goat.
Yeah.
And it was just something to to be fun about and to sing songs about. But they're absolutely horrified when they see this. And I think they say like, oh, like Thomason, like they think it might be Thomason that's over there in the barn sucking at the teat of this bleeding goat.
Which I'm wondering, where is Thomason during this point? Because she's locked in there with them, and
she must just be asleep, I guess.
I know, and like Jonas and Mercy really scream at this point, and I'm just like, how did she not wake, kind of thing. But the next morning, it
advances the morning. We see that Catherine's nipple is just bleeding profusely because a raven was cawing at it all night. And William kind of steps over her, and he goes out to check what's going on, and he just looks over, and this half-built barn that he boarded up so that they could be locked in there, the wood is just everywhere, and
it's completely obliterated.
All the white goats that were in there are just like completely disemboweled, and the twins are nowhere to be found, and there's just Thomason laying there unconscious on the ground, and she sort of wakes up, and then our favorite character from the film, Black Phillip, fucking gores him through the stomach.
Yeah, in a very, that is like a jump scare though. Yeah. And he's just kind of, you think he's going to attack like Thomason or something, because he's just like fed up. Like that's the only like child that they have left, and like obviously there has to be something wrong with her, kind of. And they have like this long eye contact, and then all of a sudden he's gored by Black Phillip. And then he goes to attack Black Phillip. Black Phillip attacks him again and really does him in.
Knocks him into the wood pile. The wood follows over him. He's obviously done for. And then not long after that, Catherine comes out and sees, that he's dead, that the twins are gone, and that Thomason is awake and conscious. So obviously she did this. So Catherine starts attacking Thomasin, and Thomasin, in self-defense, grabs a nearby cleaver when she's being almost choked out and kills her mother in self-defense.
Which she obviously doesn't want to do or anything.
Yeah, and I think they do a good job of showing that. Like, it's
Right.
not just some knee-jerk reaction. Like,
She cuts her once.
she's being choked for a while. She sort of slices her mom across the face, but then her mom continues to choke her, and it's just this life or death. You know, do I want to die here, or do I want to grab this axe that's nearby and
Right.
beat my mom to a bloody pulp?
Right.
Which is a very emotionally taxing scene. It was hard to watch that. They don't necessarily show a lot. Like, it's not, and a lot of this film is not, you know, over the top with gore. It's very tastefully.
Right.
I don't know if tastefully is the word, but it's done in a way that it's not hard to keep watching. But that scene just emotionally, because I think they do a good job of expressing that, you know, Thomasin is not this evil witch character. She's a real person that is just kind of placed in this position where, do you allow yourself to be just choked to death right there by someone who wrongfully believes that you are a witch, or do you put your life in front of, you know, your mom's?
Right.
Which I think is a tough thing to kind of put yourself in that kind of shoe.
Definitely.
But
and then Thomasin, who was just emotionally exhausted from just probably seeing her parents die, takes somewhat of a all-day nap.
Yeah.
And then wakes back up and I guess follows.
I think she kind of has
spots Black Phillip.
She has this realization that all my parents are dead. Everyone is dead here. Either I'm going to starve here, or when people actually do find me, or if I were to go back to the town, I'm going to be hung for murder, or, you know, just being a witch. So kind of out of desperation, she finds Black Phillip, approaches him, and there's this really beautiful scene where it's just this long shot just on Thomasin the entire time. It's like, you know, can you actually speak? What do you say to, you know, Jonas and Mercy this whole time? And then she almost like is about to turn away after asking all these questions. What's the thing that he says? The first words.
I forget.
It's something like, "What wouldst thou want?" or "What do you want?" or something like that. And chills went down my spine when that first happened, because you're just thinking like, okay, like this is just a plot device, and, you know, Black Phillip was just kind of like the scapegoat for what is the actual witch, you know, in the woods.
Scapegoat.
Yeah, I used that joke a few times already. It's too easy.
Yeah.
But we come to find out that Black Phillip, spoiler alert, is actually Satan himself, and he can speak, and he was speaking to the twins the entire time.
Right.
Which I thought was a pretty cool twist to happen.
It is, yeah. And they have a very
they have
creepy voice actor to voice this, and it's just it's not creepy, but it's deep and it's dark.
I mean, I think anything could have been creepy, just because you're not seeing who's speaking. It's just, you're just kind of left to imagine, like, how is this goat really expressing this? Like, is it just in the mind? Is it, like, you know, actually mouthing these words? And then as he's speaking to her, you know, he's saying, what's the one line? Would you like to live? Or he asked, like, what do you want? And I think she's not sure what she wants.
Yeah. And he says, like, would
you like the taste of butter?
Would thou like to taste the taste of butter?
A pretty dress? Wouldst thou like to live deliciously? Is like the really iconic line.
Oh, right, yeah.
And then as he's saying that, the Black Phillip sort of takes the form of Satan, or really reveals his true form as Satan, and you see this kind of black character walk behind and place his hand on Thomasin's shoulder. And he basically says, you know, to get all this, you know, do you see the book in front of you? You need to sign the book. And she's like, oh, I don't think I can. And he's like, I will guide your hand. Here's a very creepy line. So she signs the book. Or I think maybe even before she signs, he says, remove your sheath, or whatever he calls it. Basically, you know, get naked. Bitch, get naked. and really the rest of the last 5 minutes of the film at that point is Thomasin, because of her circumstances, giving in fully to Satanism in its purest form, literally giving in to Satan and joining this kind of coven of witches. And it's just this beautiful but creepy and incredibly iconic scene of just her walking naked through the forest, finding this coven of witches, doing this song and chant of just naked witches around a fire. I forget what they actually call that type of ritual. There's a word for it that I looked up before that I can't remember now. Sabbat, engaging in Sabbat. Yeah. And she kind of joins the circle, and then they all start laughing and flying and levitating.
Levitating, right. Yeah.
And she starts laughing too and levitating, and then the film ends.
Right. And there's something so that's like one of my favorite scenes too, is just her walking to the brim, like, or the edge of the woods, just completely naked, and like the Black Phillip is kind of like not leading her but like walking alongside her. There's just something like so just like pure out in nature, naked, and animals, just that's so
and it's like it's
powerful.
against like the ideas of like puritanical Christians at that point. Like any form of like nudity and like the slightest was so frowned upon. So just to be like completely nude, like that's just like a spit in the face of like puritanical Christians. And then just any kind of like magic or anything outside of anything Christian is just completely in the face of that. But that last scene, I think, is just like an instant like classic. It's an instant iconic scene, definitely like the most memorable scene of the movie. And it's literally the last frame that you see is these witches just like levitating off the ground. Like, and when it first starts happening, like I was literally just like, yo,
right, because
those witches are flying.
And that's the thing, like there is no supernatural sort of moments.
It's more just ritual before that.
Well,
besides,
there's no supernatural or any sort of like special effects up until that moment. Yeah,
that you can see. There's stuff that happens that they can't really explain.
Right.
And then I guess the first thing is Black Phillip speaking and becoming Satan, and then you're like, oh, okay, it's that kind of film.
I didn't even remember him becoming like a different figure.
If you watch, he literally walks behind, and there's a hand that
I could have sworn that she had like a hoof on her shoulder.
I think it's an actual hand because he does take the form of Satan.
Okay, but I mean, I guess then at the end, it's just like this is the first time that the filmmaker is choosing to put special effects like on the screen, really. That's what is like, whoa, like that's like really like kind of, it blows you back kind of to.
And it's weird because I think you would expect, just in terms of like a typical plot line, like because she's kind of like the protagonist for most of the film, you would expect her to maybe fight back against this, even if she loses, to stand against this, but for her to like give in to that, like, I think when it first happened, I was just kind of like, oh no.
Right, yeah.
But then as you see where it plays out, and then when you kind of think about it later, the fact that like, her entire family's dead, obviously she's going to be hung immediately if she goes back to the village for witchcraft. It's the most logical survival sense, like, to just give in to, once she realizes this is real, this, belief in Satan and this, worship of this other worldly thing and outside of Christianity, it starts to make more sense, and it kind of just adapts. It's definitely not your typical story arc at all, where it's build up, character wants something, either gets something or doesn't get something, climax, and then resolution. This is more just kind of like a constant buildup of tension and fear, where they show us what they're capable of early on in the film, then they make us afraid of it for the rest of it, and then they go like completely overboard in the last like 5 minutes in terms of just visual imagery and making us just terrified of what's going on screen.
And symbolically, I mean, this is sort of like I mean, this is taking place during the same time as like the Salem witch trials, essentially. And like I was just reading, this was actually a Jezebel article, sort of, and it's kind of like how fucked up like Salem witch trials were, not only back then, but just still as how we look at it now, where it's like this, they have like the Salem witch like museum and the Salem whatever, and like, the local high school is like the Salem witches or whatever, and it's just kind of like all of this like if we hung like 20, if we hung like 20, 30 something like black people there, kind of, or just
They killed. I was looking at. They killed literally thousands of people.
Oh, okay.
Accused of being witches. Like double digits, thousands of people.
But like it wouldn't. I didn't know that. I thought it was a lot. I mean, I thought it was in the double.
Not just in.
double
I shouldn't say not just in Salem,
right,
but across
But
that time period.
Right, but
lots of people were killed just for being accused of being witches.
But Salem's definitely the iconic place or whatever, and it's the iconic for that time.
Well, they ended up writing the day after I saw this, I was just on Wikipedia the entire day. But some guy, I can't remember his name, some monk ended up writing basically a guide for persecuting and, finding and trying witches. And the overwhelming point of that thing is basically just that witches are mostly women, and that women are more prone to being witches, which just kind of like goes back to that, sexist beliefs during that time period. And a lot of those, double digits, 30, 40, 50,000 people that were killed during that time period, about, however many 100 years, were women.
Right.
And a lot of times it was just because, they were undesirables for some reason in the community, or a neighbor that someone didn't like. And it was so easy to just be like, well, she was a witch, so let's burn her.
Right. And I feel like that this whole film and that conclusion is such a like fuck you kind of to like to everything from back then to like to now. Like again, like why do we still like we almost treat that as if it's kind of okay still. Like it's kind of like haha witches, like like
we I think we separated a little bit too much from beliefs that a lot of people still kind of hold on to.
Right.
Sort of related to that, but almost contrary to that, is I think, and what I liked a lot about the film,
right,
is that it was,
yeah, I know what you mean too.
It was not so much, I think it treated the religion of Christianity, despite it having these incredible satanic and almost anti-Christian images, it treated the religion of Christianity with a lot of respect.
Right.
To the point where, like, I think, especially in horror movies and the horror genre in general, when they show like Christian characters, it's, some dumb preacher that, can't see what's actually going on and is just holding on to his faith. And obviously he's the one that, like, will die first or something like that. Whereas in this one, it goes to show that, that's what, pretty much everyone believed at the time. There really wasn't any going outside of that belief, because it was punishable by death almost at that point. But they really do a good job of showing that that's really what these people believed,
Right.
I think there's a lot of, Christianity like nowadays where you kind of think of it as just, something that people do for show or tradition or whatnot. Right. But back then it was a true and real belief that, infected every area of your life. And the scene that I think they really show that in is when the kids are locked up in the barn and boarded up. William, the father, goes out and he's chopping wood as he does when he's, trying to get his frustration out, and he just starts crying out and speaking to God. I've given in to pride, and I forget what the other thing that he says, but he, very like minuscule crimes, but he's, to the point of just crying because he's so upset about everything. He thinks that all the things that are happening are his fault because of him being prideful and having an ego and being conceited. And you can truly feel like this is something that he believes, and then he's really got like the fear of God in him. And I think scenes like that really show that it was just a belief at that time. And I think they go about going against Christianity without mocking Christianity.
Oh, like, definitely, right.
They don't portray the satanic rituals as necessarily being right. or being, cool because it's against Christianity. It's more just, well, this is just, if witches were real, this is what would have happened.
Yeah.
And, they were existing in a time period where Christians actually did believe this thing, and we don't need to go about, mocking this. And there were even, reviews from Christian websites and Christian reviewers that were kind of like, well, they treat it with a lot of respect. It's kind of like, you don't really have to feel guilty as a Christian watching this movie, even though there is a lot of vulgar stuff going on in it, because it does treat Christianity as, a valid belief in that time period, and it doesn't mock it like a lot of horror movies do.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't like the trailer for The Conjuring 2, which you see before this film, and it's like that, like, little girl's in a room and all the crosses like start turning upside down or something. And
there's so many scenes in like horror movies where like, there's some Christian believing character and they're like reciting the Lord's Prayer as like something's about to like devour them alive. Like there was not really, there were scenes of people reciting stuff, but you honestly believed it, and there was no sarcastic or like mocking or like holier than thou tone of like, oh, look at these Christians like reciting something. It
definitely did show
it was very honest to, this is who these people are, this is who they truly believe, there's no one else that doesn't believe these things in their vicinity, like, and there just happens to be stuff that's going on against that.
Right. And you can definitely see the chaotic almost like point of religion too, and I think it's most apparent in the Caleb when he's on his deathbed and he's chanting something weird as his chest is raising, and then the parents and Thomason are doing like a prayer, and then the twins are like yelling something out too, and it's just like this room of everybody screaming like different prayer,
like complete cacophony.
and it's just like, it's crazy. And I feel like that's like a really great, and I feel like that's why like that was the centerpiece of the entire film, is like that scene. It's just the whole family kind of falling apart, and that's what it is. It's sort of like this 1600s family drama, and they're dealing with more stuff than even the witch. These poor people have not only been exiled from England, but then they were exiled again from like their like Puritan town. It's like two exiles in like one lifetime, and it's just a feeling of being unwanted, really.
Yeah.
And in how that kind of breaks apart the family, because it's like we're far from normal because this and this have happened to us.
Well, and like in terms of the film, it really jumps out of the gate with that first opening, not the opening, but that first real horror sequence of the baby being stolen and muddled essentially to just be blood to be rubbed over a body. That incredible sequence, but then it kind of just it steps back, and we have that fear of that's going to happen again, but then we're really just watching a family drama play out for the next 45 to 50 minutes before shit starts to really get real again. And we're kind of just seeing the dynamics of a family being on a secluded plantation in the 1600s, trying to hold on to their religious beliefs while their kids are being dragged away. They're not sure if there's supernatural stuff going on. The farm is not doing well. They're not selling. They've already been like banished. Just everything is going wrong for them. And how would a Christian family in that time period react to it? And it's not really until towards the end of the film that things start to get supernatural and more like a horror film, which I think works really incredibly to the film's benefit. Just not just being a typical horror movie where it's like, all right, it's been 10 minutes since we had a jump scare. We have to have a jump scare here. It's more just that fear of not even jump scares, but just that fear of, we had this incredible, terribly gory, not even gore, but just shocking open sequence. When are we going to do that again? And you don't know. And you're just kind of afraid of that the entire time.
Right. All right. So.
Yeah, probably time to.
I'm pretty
Wrap
falling
this bad
asleep.
boy up.
But if we want to do fingers, since I've been going first all night, this is another one where I feel like I've said everything I really need to say about this film. I feel like my score is a 4 fingers out of 5. Just because I still feel like, again, it's a near perfect film, but I feel like it does kind of fall into still some like cliches of horror. Like both of the parents kind of like dying like at the end kind of like scene. It's kind of just like killing off like these like, like everybody like really starts dying at the end. And I don't know, it's just like small stuff. Again, really impressed though for a director debut.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I guess to sum everything up, it's definitely absolutely incredible for a directorial and writing debut for a feature. And it's one of the most like focused and direct films that I've seen in a long time.
Oh,
just
definitely.
where, visually everything, even just the color grading in every scene seemed to match everything, where you were just in that same mood throughout.
Yeah.
The dialogue was consistent throughout. The acting was, for the most part, consistent throughout. And just, the feelings and the themes, everything just seemed so in tune and working together. And, I think you have to attribute a lot of that to, the obsessive compulsiveness of Robert Eggers in terms of, even needing like the nails and the way these,
definitely.
sets are built to be in tune with what's going on in the movie. I have to say, I'm not a huge horror fan in general, and especially not a movie like this, which isn't even really falling into the tropes of horror. It's more in line with like shock horror, almost in a way, just in the subject matter. And there's a lot of times where I wanted to compare it to and say it's like, I feel like it's the movie that like Rob Zombie has been like trying to make with a lot of his movies, where it's like almost like anti-Christian in a way, blasphemous. But this was like a smarter version of that, where it was like, you can make a movie like that and it doesn't have to just be offensive for the sake of being offensive. It can be offensive in terms of just telling an honest story about what if witches were real? What if there were real people that actually, interacted with the Dark Lord Satan, like in our world? Like, and I think taking all that into account and just visually, it's one of the best movies I think I've seen in a long time.
Oh, definitely.
I think the score, it's a horror score, so it's not, necessarily beautiful, but it's so functional in this movie. And yes, it's been overdone, the creepy violin sounds and whatnot, but I think it in this movie, it truly heightens the emotions. So I haven't given this before, and I've been waiting for a movie to give this score.
My face is lighting up.
Yeah, Joe, I think I'm going to give it 5 fingers. I try to look at things logically in terms of, I'll give it a 4.5 or a 4 if there's some things that I would change, but I can't think of anything that I would change about this movie. And I did not expect that at all, because I'm really not a horror guy at all. I enjoy them occasionally, but I'm also very critical of them. But I can't think of anything that I would have made different about this. I think everything was just working for it on all cylinders, on all levels. So I'll definitely give this the first 5 fingers
From
without
Mike?
giving anything. Yeah.
All right, so that puts us at a 4.5.
No math needed there.
4.5 fingers for The Witch.
I would definitely consider this a must-see for 2016.
Oh, definitely.
Pretty early on. We haven't talked about this yet, but it did come out at the 2015 Sundance, so I don't know if it's going to be eligible at all for anything for 2016, which is really unfortunate, because this is one of the coolest movies I've seen in a long time.
Oh, definitely. Right. I think it will. I'm not really sure, though.
I'd have to look into the eligibility.
Yeah.
Because that's such a long... There was so much other 2015 movies that came out or premiered at Sundance. I just don't know why they waited so long if it wasn't going to be eligible.
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
Anyway, so we're at a 4.5 fingers for The Witch. And just to kind of close things out, I don't actually know what we're reviewing next because we're recording this in advance.
Right, yeah. So,
But make sure you check out our website, howmanyfingerspodcast.com. Hopefully it's not a mess anymore. It's not a mess. And tweet us at HMF Podcast. We would love some more drunk synonyms or beer suggestions or just to talk to us because we're lonely and no one ever says anything. And as we've been saying the past few weeks, make sure you rate us on iTunes or whatever you're using to listen to podcast apps because that'll help us show up better in search results and related posts and whatnot and all that social media jargon. So signing out for How Many Fingers the Podcast, I'm Mike.
and I'm Joe.
And Hail Satan.